What made you think, and I don't mean this like who do you think you are, but why did Anders Myrvold think that, hey, maybe I might put on an NHL jersey one day?
Well, I knew that my biggest talent is my work ethic. You know, there's guys that are better at everything on the ice than me, but from the hop, I knew that if I train hard, if I go to practice, if I do more, and I loved the process. I just loved it. I loved to go in the gym early on. I love to hang out on the ice, all the stuff that makes it fun, but also makes it important if you're going to grow as a player. And I knew I was a good skater, and I loved to play against the better guys than me, even on that age, because there were so many Swedes that were ranked high in the draft. They're going to go high, and they were talking about them, and I kind of loved to play against them, to try to beat them and trying to hit them and trying to get under his skin. I was early on I loved it. So be the underdog always fits me really good.
That was Anders Myrvold, the first Norwegian-born hockey player to ever wear an NHL jersey. And you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podollan. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podollan, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podollan, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hey there, and welcome back, or welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podollan. I am your host, Jason Podollan, and today you are in for a bit of a treat. I know it was a treat for me because this guy has essentially dropped out of my life after the 2002-2003 season. Anders Myrvold and I played together in Germany for the Mannheim Adler, or the Mannheim Eagles, if we're going to use English. And it was one of those guys that we sort of instantly connected. It was my first time over in Europe, my first time in Germany. I was trying to reinvent myself over there. Like, that was sort of my game plan. I was going to go over to Germany after a pro career in North America, and I was going to try and have a really good offensive year, connect kind of back to my offensive roots, and come back to North America, hopefully with a contract or a tryout or some kind of buzz about me. That was the game plan. And when I got there, it was such a different environment. It was such a crazily different experience. I had no idea what to expect. And Mannheim was a very professional organization. They took really good care of us. They were always trying to win championships. So they assembled a really good group. And Anders was somebody that they had brought in that year as well. So we were both rookies there. Anders had just finished a season with the Wolfpack in the AHL. He had NHL games under his belt by that point with 3 different teams. He was a year older than mine than me, and we just kind of hit it off like right away. He had a fun spirit to him. He liked to laugh. He had a really, really good energy, and yeah, we just sort of shared the same language. So we hung out a lot that year. I mean, at practices, after practices, and it was one of those guys that, although you were surrounded by essentially 19 friends, like, he was a really good buddy of mine that year. And then as seasons go, I mean, Anders went someplace else, and I stayed, and we just sort of lost track of each other. And I have not talked to Anders until this interview. So this is 2002, 2003. We're now in like 20 years, right? Or is that 30 years? No, that's 20 years. Yeah, 20 years. Haven't talked to him in 20 years. So we get on this conversation, just as a heads up, and talked for about 45 seconds before we pressed record. I was like, let's just catch up on the episode. So that's what happened. So I just pressed record, and off we went. And as far as a little bit about Anders, I mean, outside of being one of my good buddies, we get into his story, and a lot of the stuff that I found out on the interview was stuff that I never even knew about him when we were hanging out. And I think that's kind of I don't know if that's good or bad, but I kind of think it's good in a way. You know, when hockey players we're being hockey players all the time, and sometimes we just don't want to be hockey players. So like when Anders and I were hanging out, we weren't talking about hockey. We were just having a good time. We were laughing, finding ways to have fun and to kind of re-energize and you know, just sort of take a break from the profession. And we never had the big discussions about his history or his past or who he played for or who he played with, and just kind of keep it light. I think hockey players are generally pretty good at doing that, just sort of compartmentalizing stuff. So for me, listening to this, being able to ask these questions and to hear about his story, it was super compelling. Like, he left home at 14. We get into that. Like 14 years old, not only left home, but like essentially lived on his own at 14. Yeah, like think about that. I have a 14-year-old right now. I could not imagine that happening. About him going to, you know, having to leave home, going to Sweden, and getting drafted, and how this draft story, it was super compelling and crazy. Love that story. And coming over to Canada and playing major junior in Canada, and then his ride into Colorado, where he played 4 games with the Avalanche, and he played with the Bruins, and he played with the Islanders as far as NHL games are concerned. He had 2 AHL All-Star appearances, and played all over Europe as well. So, I mean, Anders has a great story, and then there's a huge bombshell at the end of the conversation. So you got to stick around for that. I'm not going to tell you about it, but it's honestly a huge bombshell and a big shock to me. And we get into that a little bit as well towards the end. So, yeah, great guy, doing great things over in Norway. He still calls Norway home now. Has Camp Myrvold going on there, where he trains, where he's a personal trainer. He's also the GM of one of the professional teams there. So I think you're going to enjoy this. I really enjoyed catching up with him and sharing his story with you all. Lots of lessons in there, as always, and lots of lessons from adversity as well. So without further ado, I bring you the first player to ever wear an NHL jersey, who was born in Norway, Mr. Anders Myrvold. Well, wouldn't you know it? Holy crap, man. After all these years, Anders Myrvold, welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast.
Hey, good to see you, Jason. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, we just for everyone listening, like Anders and I haven't seen each other since Anders already said 2002, 2003 season with Mannheim. And haven't necessarily talked since. We had a little bit of a discourse over email a little while ago, like a couple of years ago, but other than that, nothing. Radio silence. So this is brand new catch up for all of us. So, geez, I don't even know where to start, dude. Like, it's been so long.
Yeah, that's one of the beauty about hockey. You know, it seems like I saw you yesterday, because we met in Mannheim, and we were like catching, like we get that good spark right from the hopper, and we were good friends, and we were hanging out, and we had a good time. You know, it was a rough year for me personally. I mean, hockey wise, but with you beside me, it made it a lot easier.
You know what? Like that. It is true. I mean, so hockey's, well, yeah, I mean, that's maybe a great place to start. Hockey's amazing on a lot of levels, one of which is the relationships. I will say, like your career, my career, we were all over the damn place. So like it was hard to, let's say, maintain friendships. It was sort of part of the process, right? Like you get on a team and maybe you find a couple guys that you chum around with, and then you're off to somewhere else, and so it goes, you know, such is life. But to echo what you said, like it was crazy. Well, not it wasn't crazy, but we hung out a ton that year. You know, like we hung out a ton and then like completely lost touch. So like we do need to catch up, because holy smokes, like I even look back now at your hockey DB, and I kind of completely forgot that you went back to North America and ended up playing NHL games after that year. So like I want to talk about the hockey, I want to talk about life, I want to talk about it all.
Yeah, I mean that's how hockey is. I mean, I've been in so many different teams like you have, and you have certain guys in every team. Like, I mean, I have so many good friends. I haven't really talked to them in a while, but I catch up now and then, and it seems like yesterday, just like you. I mean, there's a few guys in every team that stick with me, and even if I don't see them every day, they're there, and now it's our turn, and I love it. It's great, you know. And I mean, my journey is I'm from Norway, and I was actually the first Norwegian guy that signed an NHL contract. You know, Norway is not a huge country coming to hockey. You know, Now we have Matt Zuccarello there in Minnesota. We had a few other guys, but I think it's only been like 8 or 9 guys coming from Norway. So when I first get drafted by the Quebec Nordiques, that's later was Colorado Avalanche, I went over to training camp, and I stayed in the junior hockey league, and I played in the Q. And that was an unbelievable year. You know, I know you played in the Western Hockey League. Yeah, you know everything about it. It was a rough setting for a European to come over to the junior league. You know, there was fighting, and there was just a crazy mayhem all over. But I understood if I wanna make the NHL, I need to stay here and play here. And
right.
You know, you grow up fast when you play in the junior league.
No kidding. Well, maybe that's such an interesting place to start, and maybe that is the best place to start. Is actually you growing up. So I mean, Norway. I don't know much about it, although I did go to Norway with you when you invited me over there for one of our breaks. So I've been to Oslo thanks to Anders Myrvold, and so I did see it. My feet have been on the ground in Norway, but obviously I don't know what it's like to live there, or what it was like growing up and trying to be a hockey player. Like what was hockey like at the time when you were coming up as a minor hockey player?
Well, I mean, we had players. We had a few players that we had a national team that was in the A group. You know, always battling to stay in the A group. When I was saying to everybody I want to play in the NHL one day, they didn't want to believe me because no one else had done it. So I went to Sweden when I was 15. My dad was a good sport. He was also my coach when I was younger. He was hard. He was tough, and but he's one of my best friends now, and he was really close to me. So I listened to him. He said, if you want to play hockey in NHL, you have to move out of here, he said, because the program is better and bigger in Sweden. So I left when I was 14 years old to Sweden. And that made me, take responsibility for my own action to be a better hockey player. You know, you're young as a 14-year-old, and then I lived by myself. I had to do my laundry. I had to make my own food. I have to make sure I go to school in the morning and then go to practice twice a day. So I learned quickly that this is up to me if I want to do this. And when I was 18, I get drafted, and then when I moved to Canada, that was kind of like a natural step to get closer to the dream,
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to let you go that quick through all that good stuff. That's the best part of this pod that we can dig in a little bit. So 14 years old, dad says, okay, son, I know you want to have this dream. I know you want to be a player. Mind you, I want to dig into the whole idea about the belief factor, because to do something that no one's ever done before is always a big step, right? Like to come from Norway to play in the NHL, there has to be some type of belief there. But first of all, I want to talk about the 14. You said, what do you mean you did this all by yourself? Like you didn't have a billet family? You didn't have anyone with you, or?
No, I mean, I came to a big team in Sweden that was called Färjestad. They grow Håkan Loob, Bengt-Åke Gustafsson. A lot of NHLers come from this organization. They have a strong junior team, and they have a good system. You go there, but you live by yourself in your own apartment, and you have to take care of everything, the bills, and you have to take care of everything. They look after you. The team look after you. But it's a smaller city, so it's not that scary to be there. I feel really comfortable right away, but I knew right from the hopper that this is challenging because I need to take care of everything by myself. And I mean, for some young players, I think maybe it could be too young, but for me, I just learned that I need to do this if I'm going to, be able to play here and maybe move on one day,
That's crazy. So you were 14 in your own apartment doing everything.
Yeah. Doing everything. But I mean, my mom, I'm not going to lie. My mom came over, like Norway is not too far. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. She came over often to make sure the fridge was full with food and she cleaned. And so I'm not going to be a hero here, she was good. And, she made sure that things were good. And
that's still impressive though, man. Like 14, like because that's like time warp for me. I don't necessarily remember everything that I was doing at 14. But my son, my oldest, is 14 right now. and love him to death, and he's capable of a lot of things. But I'm not sure if he was in Sweden right now on his own in his own apartment, how he'd be doing.
Yeah, but I mean, if the environment needs to be really solid, and they need to have a good system, they need to have good coaches that take care of the players, and they did. The school system was really strong as well, so they had good connection with the team. So they knew they knew where you were at any time. You couldn't run around and do crazy stuff because they were there right on you. So, I mean. It was good, and I have a good feeling when I think about it later on that this was 3 good years of my life, and it was really inspiring to be there because I could see those guys, the Swedish big guys, that Håkan Loob and all those guys playing there that has been in the NHL. So it made NHL a little closer to be there.
Right, sure it would have. Before you hop ship there, and we'll talk about you coming to Canada and the idea behind that. I love talking about the belief, right? And talk about, what you think is possible and what you think you can do. What made you think, and I don't mean this like who do you think you are, but why did Anders Myrvold think that, hey, maybe I might put on an NHL jersey one day?
Well, I knew that my biggest talent is my work ethic. There's guys that are better at everything on the ice than me, but from the hop, I knew that if I train hard, if I go to practice, if I do more, and I loved the process. I just loved it. I loved to go in the gym early on. I love to hang out on the ice, all the stuff that makes it fun, but also makes it important if you're going to grow as a player. And I knew I was a good skater, and I loved to play against the better guys than me, even on that age, because there were so many Swedes that were ranked high in the draft. They're going to go high, and they were talking about them. And I kind of loved to play against them, to try to beat them and trying to hit them and trying to get under his skin. I was early on, I loved it. So be the underdog always fits me really good. And it was the same in Sweden.
Right. So, okay, cool. I love that. So you're in Sweden, you're chasing the dream. You got drafted in 93, it says, right? So that would have been, according to Hockey DB, you were still in Sweden when you got drafted. Is that right?
No, I mean, I played the European champion. This is a kind of funny story why I get drafted, because I played for Norway in the European Championship, and obviously Norway hasn't a great team. We're going to play a favorite in the first game, and that was Sweden. And they had some big names, like they had Niklas Sundström. He was supposed to go in the first round, and he did. He went 6 overall. And I remember really well that, okay, I know there's a lot of scouts in the stands. If I make Niklas Sundström's life miserable in this game, I'm sure someone's going to see my number. And that's what I did. I just went after him. I hit him. I was under his skin. And he took a 2+2 slashing me over the. So he went to the penalty box. He didn't score one goal that game. And this is the funny part, because they won. Sweden won 13-1 that game. They won 13-1. But later on that year, I was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques, and the head scout Dave Draper, he told me that, hey, we were looking at Niklas Sundström, but there was a guy from Norway with number 20. He was a good skater. He could handle Niklas Sundström. So we put him in the draft here, number 5 in the 5th round. So that was the story. My idea worked. And I mean, to be the underdog, you have to believe that. Back to the belief. You have to believe that you belong there. And I always believe. That's why I think I had the opportunity to play one day in the NHL as well.
That is awesome. I love that idea, because one of the things, like when I'm working with players now on an individual level, like I'm always trying to get them to understand how they can impact a hockey game, right? Like generally speaking, and when you played pro, like guys are always thinking about, did they score? Did they get an assist? Or they're thinking about those type of metrics. But like, think about how many shifts there are in a game or in a season where, a goal doesn't go in the net. Like, how did you impact the game in that shift? And you taking that mentality at that young age to say, you know what, like, I'm going to make this guy's life miserable. And lo and behold, you got noticed, right? Like you got noticed by impacting the game a little differently.
Yeah, exactly. And funny part was I was playing center till I was 14. I was playing center. And my dad said, listen, there's there's not enough D-men that can skate well. So you should play D, Myrvold. And you're better off defending than scoring goals. So I turned center to D when I was 14, right before I went to Sweden. So that kind of changed everything, because I know that I would never play the NHL as a centerman, but as a demon, I could skate and I can move the puck and I could hit guys. So that, suits me really well. So that was a good change for me as well.
That's a big one. Yeah, a lot of people are really stuck, right? Like with their positions. And I understand that you have to make a decision at some point, but like I'm talking even at like the young levels now, when I'm hearing parents in the stands, talk to me, or they're upset because little Johnny was supposed to be a center and now he's playing left wing tonight, and heaven forbid, right? Like wants to get mad at the coach, and we're talking like U11, U13 kind of hockey, and I'm like, oh my God, that's the biggest gift ever. To try different positions, to see what's going on. It raises your hockey IQ, your understanding of the game, like all these things, right? Like, I think it's better. And then the fact that you're able to do it at that age and stick to it, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's good.
You have to be adaptable, right? Like, I don't know, like the ability to be adaptable is helpful.
But I think it's really important that you have the right people around you. Obviously, you've been around so many times, so the kids that are around you, they're really, they should be really thankful, because like we talk right now, the game from every aspect of it. And I mean, it's not easy for all the players, because they have bad coaches and they have dads and moms that just want them well, but they have never been in the game. So they just too much emotions that maybe destroys the happiness and the joy of it. And then that stops everything.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I was talking with my son, actually. I told you he's 14. He's a 2009, and we were just chatting about the idea of okay, first of all, the percentages of making the NHL, which I know everyone talks about that and how slim it is, right? It's hard to do. Okay, like, so we get it, but the percentages of players to play in the NHL from offspring of NHLers is quite a bit higher.
Yeah.
Right. And if you talk about professional sports just in general, it's also higher. Now, of course, there's genetics involved in that, but we were breaking down the idea of like genetics versus like environment and nurture, and like how much that influences the next generation coming up. Because not that I mean, you don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. Like, I'm not pretending that, but I do know that I am well more equipped to handle Hudson than the guy who works a construction site for a job, now, and never was involved in a team sport, right? Like, it just makes sense, So it is interesting, right? Because there's so many nuances to being your best and to being a pro hockey player that a lot of people just don't know, right?
Exactly, for sure. And that's what I like to not teach, but talk to the young players now. I'm a sports manager right now in Norway, and then we have some guys that are going to be drafted. I just want to talk to them about the process and what I experienced, just so they have the information I didn't have,
right?
Because that's what it's all about. And you have that, and I have that, and that's an honor to share it. And we need to share it
No, great. That's a great point. Yeah. You talked about, you felt that your differentiator was your, your approach. I mean, you use the word process, which I love to use the word process too, but your willingness to kind of love that aspect of the game. Do you feel with your players or the people that are around you that that's something that can be taught and mentored?
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, obviously, and I think it's important, like, you and me being in every league, we have been through so many coaches, and I think that's an advantage. A lot of these NHL players, they have been in one team and experienced one thing for their whole career. But you and me, we've been around and seen so many different things, and we know the hockey world in so many different ways. And there's ups and downs, and I think that's a huge advantage. And I love to talk to young players about just that. Don't be afraid, but just, you're going to meet a lot of ups and downs in your career, and it's all about the ups and downs. And if you can handle it, you're going to have a fun career and you're going to enjoy it. Yeah. But it's going to be a lot of ups and downs.
Definitely a lot of ups and downs. You said definitely, though. I want to shine a light on that when I asked you if you think it can be taught, because there's a lot of stuff that, people that are still involved in the hockey world today think that can't be, like competitiveness comes to mind for me. Even character comes to mind for me, like work ethic. I do honestly 100% believe that these things can be taught. Like, I think that if you can connect the player and the person behind the player to some of these ideas and, philosophies, that they can change the way that they show up. But a lot of people don't. So like, why were you so, adamant in your answer saying yes, definitely? Like, why do you think that people can change when it comes to that type of stuff?
I mean, if you really want it bad enough and you have that hunger to be better, at anything. I think it's teachable and it's coachable. And I mean, the character and the discipline, it kind of starts when you're younger. But I mean, people come from everywhere, and you see these kids with huge talent. If they come into the right environment and you put them into a system that will work, they will change as well, because they have a talent, but they need maybe a stronger character. They need more discipline. Well, then you have to teach them, but you have to be a teacher that not only telling them, you have to show them, they have to show this is the way to do it. Yeah. And it's going to cost you. I think the character and the discipline, he has to be there if you're going to go anywhere. And I mean, if you can teach them as young as you can, that's great. But I think to come to a certain level, certain age, then maybe it's not too late, but maybe it's too late to be an NHL, but not too late for life. But I mean, as a hockey player, you need to teach them in a certain age. You have the perfect age. You can form these guys to have a strong character.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny though, even like at the NHL level, you'll have guys come from different, teams, which means different cultures, right? Have experienced hockey a certain way, and then they get into, well, I mean, we'll get to it with your career. They get to a team like the Detroit Red Wings, right, where it's been all about winning, and there's just been this culture there, and all of a sudden, some of these guys show up that have maybe been deemed as selfish, or some of these outside guys, but now all of a sudden they're a part of this environment. And they start to get it, and they change themselves, right? So I have seen that at the pro level, but I'll use a little anecdote just from our own personal life here. Like in our family, my oldest is 09, my youngest is a 2012, right? So 3 brothers in the same house. We talked about obviously the fact that I was an NHLer, so I sort of know how to get things done and maybe how to prepare. They think they want to be players too. So yes, Hudson, my oldest, right, he has a really strong work ethic. He does, right? Like I can't fault him for that. It's actually his approach to the game is pretty professional, considering he's a 14-year-old, like, and what he's willing to do and how he's willing to get better. But guess who gets to watch that every day, Anders? His little brother. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like his little brother who's 10, who's a really good hockey player too. So that environment for him now, like it's normal for him to see his brother in the garage shooting pucks for an hour and a half a day and working out and doing pull-ups. So now that's normal for him. Like if he's not doing it, he doesn't think that he's doing something wrong, right? So like I just think that that's really interesting when you're in that environment, right? And you see process, and then you can learn it, and then you adapt it, and now your standards change on a personal level, right? Like that's pretty powerful stuff. So when you take a kid, and why I'm saying that, right? So you take this kid, to my point of like saying people can learn this. Some of them just haven't been exposed to it. Some of them don't get it. Some of them don't know how, right? So now you give them an option to show up differently, and sometimes they do,
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's a funny story, because the year after, when I signed for Detroit, I was in Detroit, and I was on the ice. I always stay on the ice, but I was a little bit early that day, and I went out in Joe Louis Arena. It was kind of dark. They closed the light a little bit, but there was one guy on the ice that was still shooting pucks, and it was Steve Eisenman. And I was kind of embarrassed because I was 27 years old. I was all dressed up, and he was still on the ice shooting those pucks. I was kind of like crawling down so he couldn't see me. So I was just walking. So holy fuck, that's not going to be me. I said, that's not going to be that guy that is going home early. And he was probably 40 years old about that time, but he was still working on his shot and just being that professional and having that effort every practice. And then that teaches you something, that it's they've done it over and over again, and it's no surprise they're in the NHL for so long.
Yeah, I love you telling that story, because that is one of the connections. People sometimes think that it's a talent-driven sport, like being a superstar, right? And yeah, sure, Steve Eisenman has a hell of a lot of talent, but you know what? There's a lot of guys who probably had as much talent as him, but probably weren't falling in love with the process as much and staying as late as he was and doing all those things to make him a superstar.
Exactly. That's a reason for everything. So it's clearly your sons are on the right path there, Jason. No doubt.
Well, yeah, I don't know. The thing that I love about sport, and I think that with what you're doing now with Camp Myrvold, it seems like you're building people, as well as athletes right now too, which is one thing that I like to say. The stuff that they're learning right now about like how to get better, like the commitment that it takes, doing hard things, in order to get better. Like geez, I mean, does that not just correlate to anything that you want to do? Like anything in life to be successful at. So yeah, I mean, I love the fact that they love hockey. I love that they're good at it. I like that they found a passion. And regardless of what happens with hockey, I think they're going to be better people because of their exposure to it.
But I mean, obviously, I think people nowadays are soft. Like kids are soft, and they're so everything is coming to them. So that second effort, you see it less and less because they have everything around them. So I have kid. She's 5 years old. 2 kids have 5 and 8, and I mean, not the discipline. It's not about the discipline. It's like you said, they need to get up, do their bed. They need to do those stuff to take care of themselves, even in early age, because I really believe that, we're going to have a lot of fun, but we need some rules and we need some structure to get there. And I believe that because I have like Camp Myrvold is, we're doing every day. We work with people every day. This is grown up people. But we want to get up in the morning, do the job, and move on. To do those things, and that's the most important thing to have a progress moving forward.
I love that. Okay, so let's jump back into your journey. So you're in Sweden for 3 years, from 14, 15, 16. You get drafted, and then so Quebec. I mean, Quebec at the time drafts you, and they're like, hey, I guess it must have been one of their ideas too, right? Like, do you want to come over to North America and play some junior hockey, get ready for a potential pro career?
Well,
was that how it went?
I went to the training camp in Quebec the first year and had a good training camp. And the Quebec Nordiques wanted me to go to Laval that year. I had 1 more year with Färjestad. So I decided to go back and to play 1 more year in Sweden before I go over. But I had a meeting with Bob Hartley. He was one of the coaches, and Bob Hartley was the junior coach in Laval Titan. And everybody that knows Bob, he's a different bird. We can talk about him later. But I wanted to be, a little bit smart. So I said, listen, I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish to my school and then come back here and play next year. And he goes, Anders, you want to be a hockey player or you want to be a carpenter? He said on the French Canadian. So I said, well, I'm going to stay over here. So I stayed in Laval the next year in the junior league with Michel Terrien was the coach. He's obviously an NHL coach. And I had a great year in Laval. And it was probably the year I learned the most because we played 72 games. We traveled all over the country. And I learned that because my game, it was kind of like I could play 3 good games. And then I was kind of like slacking down a little bit because I was maybe tired or I was comfortable. I did some points. I feel good. But Michel Terrien, he took me in the room and he said, listen, Myrvold, your highs are highs, but when your lows are really low, so you need to get a higher low. So when you have an off day, you need to be more professional. You have to get in there and move your level up. And that really teaches me to focus on the days that I didn't want to go to the rink or I felt a little tired or hockey wasn't that fun because we play a lot of games. And it really teaches me to be good when I had an off day. And that was an unbelievable good experience for me. And we went all the way. We went to the final. We didn't go to the Memorial Cup because we lost in the final in Quebec. And that was obviously a bummer, but the whole year was great. And it rewarded me with a contract with the Colorado Avalanche. That's year.
Awesome.
So it was
isn't it? Yeah, that's the you kind of hit it on the head there. I mean, there's maturity involved in being a hockey player for sure, but I think one of the biggest pieces of the maturity to be a professional is the consistency, right? Like
consistency.
Like the coach wants to know what he gets out of you when you're going on the ice, and if he knows what he's going to get, whether that's good 12 minutes as a third line forward, and he knows what that is, you're going to get those 12 minutes. But if he doesn't know every game, and I think that to your point, I was actually just listening. Anyways, I don't want to get sidetracked too much here, but I heard a former GM talking about me when I was trying to make the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was a YouTube video that I just found, and both these guys said I needed to improve my consistency. But listening to that now and you bringing that up, I mean, yes, that is the true step of a pro. I never really understood what that meant. In like, I remember like back at that time, like they would say that and I'd be like, well, what does that even mean? Like, I'm not going to score a goal every single game. Like nobody does that. Right. So like, what about my game needs to be more consistent. And that was the part in the communication aspect, because I thought I was super coachable, but I didn't know what that was. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
Did you know what that was for you? Like, if somebody said you needed to be more consistent?
Well, I mean, I took that as a competing level. Like, I can compete if I go to the game. I don't do the points, but I compete on I battle hard every game. I do the things that block a shot, or I get into the battles. I try to get the puck out, get the puck in. So I kind of knew that if I do that on the off days, it will make me as a stronger player, because my dream to come to the NHL was so strong by then, because I knew I was so close. So I want to do everything, so I was scared of having a day off. So I was like, I have to get in there and get to the shitter. And I mean, I fight too. I come from Europe, and I throw my gloves, because I knew the scouts that said, listen, if you throw the gloves, it's going to be closer. So I get beat up a couple of times, and I picked the wrong guy, and then tried again, and then get a hold of it. But I mean, that made me one of those European guys that could skate and had that grit to it, and I loved it. So I always kind of been like not a hard-nosed player. I mean, hard worker, that want to get into it. And I think back to your question, I mean, the work ethic needs to be there on the days off.
Yeah. Short break from the conversation to share what is going on with Up My Hockey. We are already building for the 24-25 season. Yes, if you can believe that. What has been happening this year is that academies and associations, whether it be a city or a hockey academy, they are looking to offer personal development, mental fitness programs to their athletes. And that is exactly what Up My Hockey specializes in. So a few of the associations have been in beta programs this year to see if they want to adopt a programming throughout their entire association. That goes from U11, U13, U15, U18 on up. If you're in the States, obviously those the U's go on the other side. But you understand what I mean, that there is competitive programming available for mental fitness and personal development for your teams through Up My Hockey. If this is something that you find interesting, if this is something that you find compelling, if you are a decision maker or somebody on the board or somebody that has the ear of your association or organization, by all means, have them reach out. This is the direction that I want to go. This is the direction that has the opportunity to impact the most hockey players possible, which is exactly what I want to do. And the programming is age appropriate, right? U11 competitive teams will graduate into a U13 program. U15 has their own program, and U18 has their own program. So as the athletes mature and grow within your hockey enterprise, they can also grow their mental fitness and their personal development through Up My Hockey plug and play systems. So this is a done for you approach. It takes all the onus off your coaches and off your development director. It's an easy, done for you, effective culture building system that brings teams together, allows players to be their best, and is really something that you can add into the programming repertoire. Because I know it's a competitive environment out there. Everyone's trying to offer the best program available, but when it comes to mental fitness, it's tough to land it right on the mark. And without my hockey, you obviously get me. You get a 10-year professional. You get a person that's played in the NHL that has been doing this for 3 years and has been able to have breakthrough after breakthrough with players and teams, and can really provide exactly what it is you are looking for. Another advantage, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here right now, and one of the things that, as far as academies and associations don't really understand, is that working on mental fitness, working on resiliency training, working on personal development, and when that message not only comes from the players but also gets to the parents, it's amazing how many fewer problems there are in a season. That we're not always looking for what's wrong, but we're looking for what's right, or the way to get through a potential challenge, a way to overcome it, maybe seeing the silver lining. And the culture of a whole organization can change with the proper inputs. So yeah, I mean, if that is also a big checkbox for people when they start doing these programs, is that, yeah, like the problems seem to disappear. We start taking more accountability, we start taking more ownership. We want our children to kind of overcome some of these things, and yeah, it becomes a culture of success. So lots to be excited about at Up My Hockey and with the programming there. And yeah, and if you're, again, with an association or a program, or if you're just involved with a team, you just want to take care of your own team, that is looking into the 24-25 season, as we're already having discussions now. It's the best time of year to get going, when we start with budgets and we start with scheduling and all the things that have to happen to get it right. So that's, again, at the Up My Hockey website, upmyhockey.com, or you can reach out to me personally, Jason at upmyhockey.com, to get a hold of me and get those discussions started. So let's get back to the conversation here with Anders Myrvold. I'm just looking at that team now. Daniel Gano, he was on my World Junior team that I played with.
Look at the penalty shot minutes on that team, because that was House of Pain I played for. It was like almost 3,000 penalty minutes in that team. There was a mayhem. We had a great team. We had Francis Boyot played in Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah,
Jason Doig played there the first year. We had a bunch of good guys that played some NHL
Patrick
games.
Boileau was also there.
Patrick Boileau, Jason Doig. We had a really good team that year, and it was a really fun year.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy.
There was House of Pain in Laval. So it was if you're up 4 goals or down 4 goals, that was just a brawl every game.
You know what? That's funny you bring that up, and I don't really want to focus on it, but like, I don't like. Okay, I understand the game. The game has obviously changed at the NHL level. You know what I mean, and down through juniors. Well, geez, did you know that they took fighting out of the queue?
Yeah, I heard that. This year.
So you can't even do it. So, like, obviously things are changing. There's a part of me that really doesn't like it at all. Both of us, I think we were kind of pretty similar the way we played. Like, I was willing to go in corners. I liked mucking it up. I love the one-on-one battles. I love the competition. I dropped my gloves if I needed to. Generally, it was for a teammate other than for myself, but I was willing to do that. And I took pride in the fact, that we were able to play that way and that level of competition. When I went and watched a couple WHL games last year, and like home ice losing 8-0, like some scenarios like that, and it looked like no one cared. Yeah. Like, you mean, I don't care if there's blind brawls. It doesn't have to be like it used to be, but like, how can you not lose with a little bit of pride? You know what I mean? Like that it actually looks like you care, that you're getting your asses kicked. Like, I don't understand that anymore.
No, me either. And I think it's I'm totally against it, to be honest with you, because I mean, the fighting rule, I loved it because it's codes and you know what it's all about. When you play hard, when you're stepping over the line, when the other team has that toughness, are you able to step up? It's a different game. You protect it now. You can use your stick. You can get under the other guy's skin. It's a different game. It's I'm not going to say it's a softer game. It's a faster game, but it's softer when it comes to the grit. Obviously, the guys now can feel more comfortable out there than we did. Obviously,
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that there's, like it was hard, right? I mean, that's the thing, and I think that was like for me, like the internal, like the self-belief, self-worth, kind of like we could walk away from a game and know that, holy shit, like that, not everybody could do that. No. Like to show up and to go to places, you don't know where it's coming from or when it's coming. You got to go to the front of the net, and it might be, like all those things. Like I was really proud of being a professional hockey player. So I know we agree on that, but can we, like, does it mean that they don't care anymore? Like like, that's the part I don't understand, is like, maybe like I said, maybe you don't get in a fight, but shouldn't you be like mad? And shouldn't I see that in a game?
See, that's what I'm looking at too. Obviously, there's still some guys who left, but they can't step over the line. They get suspended for so many games if they do something like a little off or anything. So, I mean, the rule protects the guys, because I believe there's a lot of guys with strong characters and they will still do it. But I mean, the whole system changed, and social media is there to kind of like trying to put it away as well. A lot of scenarios. So it's a totally different game. It's fun because a lot of scoring goals, but I'm a little bit upset because I like the hard-nosed battle. You get the Scott Stevens, you get the battles against New Jerseys, you get those tough guys that runs around and you never know what's going to happen. And the other teams need to step up. You know, I don't know. It's a different grit. It was back then.
So Rene Corbet, do you remember that name?
Yeah, well, yeah, I know him well.
Okay, yeah, because were you guys in the you were in Mannheim too.
Yeah, he was there, but I know him from Colorado as well. He was in Colorado when I was there my first year.
So his kid is the same age as my kid, one of his kids, and so they're coming to a tournament. Anyways, I digress, but I'm just telling you why we were text messaging the other day, right? And that morning, I was doing something on Facebook for my Facebook parent group, and in my feed came this, like, I think it was 1995, like the game, like Colorado versus Detroit, with like the whole, remember the Lemieux scenario, and then the goalies fought, Law and Vernon fought, and like
I was there. I was a Black Ace there.
Were you?
Yeah, I was with Colorado that year, so I was there, and I was a Black Ace. Yeah.
So, like, that was one of the most epic 90s games, I think. Like, it's kind of like, if you could put the 1990s in a nutshell, like, there was speed there. There was a hell of a lot of talent on that ice. There was, like, you had to fight for every inch. Anyways, it was this 10-minute clip of this game. And Corby scored in it, which I had no idea. I didn't even know Corby was in that game. But Corby scored in it. Corby fought in that game. Who else didn't fight in that game? But, like, I mean, I guess I'm a dinosaur, but I'm like, oh my God, that was fun. Like, that's good hockey right there.
That was, everybody was talking about it, and there was a battle that never been seen after, I believe.
No kidding.
They still talk about it as it was yesterday.
I can't believe you were there. And then they had on, you know who was in the lineup? I think it was for Detroit. It was Mike Knuble, I think was the name. And it was his first ever NHL game, was that game. Like, could you imagine if that was your first kick at the Cat?
Yeah. That's just the mayhem. Everybody was fighting Larry Onoff and Peter Forsberg. They hated each other. It was hate.
Oh, they legitimately hated each other. And I think that's kind of the thing where I still like watching NHL hockey now. Well, I mean, I'll watch NHL hockey because I'm a hockey fan, you know, and I do like beginning of the year. It seems like some of that physicality is coming back. I think the pendulum has swung a little bit. You know what I mean? That they're getting a little tougher again. NHL playoffs is obviously the best, but goodness gracious, watching those guys do that with that many Hall of Famers on the ice was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, for sure.
What talk about that, like, coming over, like, first of all, so you go from Norway to Sweden. Did you pick up the language there, I assume?
Yeah. I went to Sweden. They're similar, Norway and Sweden, but I learned Swedes really fast, quick. So it's
and then you hop over to Canada, which happens to be a French-speaking area. So did you start speaking French too?
No, just the swearing words. That was the only thing I catch up. I wasn't too good at it.
Did the boys speak English there then for you?
Yeah, there were a lot of French Canadians, but it was in Montreal, so they had half and half. So they were speaking English. The coach was speaking English as well, so it was an easy team to come to.
Well, you know what though? Why am I assuming that you knew how to speak English at that point? Like, so you knew how to speak English?
Well, we learn in school, so I you know, it's we can understand everything when you get there. Yeah.
So trilingual at that point.
Yeah. So it's exactly.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So it's so then I stayed there, and I had 2 years. 2 years in Colorado, and I made the team the first year. So I came over, and I think I started in the wrong end because I made the team that won the Stanley Cup. You know, I came into training camp, and I had a great training camp, and they sent Alexei Gusarov down to the minors as the last guy. So I sticked around, and I played that first games against Detroit. First game in McNichol Sports Arena in Denver in '96 when the team moved there, and later on, you know, won the Stanley Cup that year. I played the first 4 games, and I stayed there for a month and a half, was scratched, and then I get sent down. And that was probably my worst. I believe that's one of my worst days in my hockey career because I didn't know much about the American Hockey League, to be honest with you. I knew there was an American Hockey League, but my start was so good in the NHL, so I thought I'm going to stay there for 10 years. They told me to move in with the Peter Forsberg, and, you know, I said, listen, this is the way it should be. But God, Jesus, when I get sent down, that was a wake-up call.
Well, okay, so holy smokes, like let's unpack that. So you make the team
Yeah.
and you get to play, and you were at the time the very first Norwegian player to play an NHL game. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a huge thing, you know. It was in the paper, and obviously in Norway it was in the paper, and there was in the TV every day. You know, it's like the biggest thing that ever happened over here, hockey wise. So it's
Yeah.
I kind of like got into that bubble. You know, you say you get a little high on yourself. I believe when I look back, probably I was, you know, because I thought this is the way it's going to be, you know, because Mark Crawford was the coach and he just talked good stuff about me. I was on the power play, so I played 18, 20 minutes every game, you know, when I played there. So I was obviously, I get a lot of responsibility, you know, and then they made a trade. They traded Ove Nolan and Sandis Oslunds came in. You know, Sandis Oslunds was one of the top defensemen in the league. And then that was when I get sent down. And that was a normal thing to get sent down. Obviously, that's young players always get sent down and spend a few years there. But for me, I was on a different stage of mind. I thought I'm going to stay there. And kind of broke me a little bit when I went down to, and the coach down there was Bob Hartley. So, oh my God, that was Bob Hartley. I met Bob Hartley as a 20-year-old. And if you're not ready for that, it's going to be a long year. It's going to be a long year. I still have nightmares dreaming about Bob Hartley.
For real?
Yeah, I mean, he obviously is a good coach. He knows what he's doing. He's been winning the Stanley Cup. He has his philosophy is fear. You know, he uses fear, and for me as a 20-year-old, I just get scared. You know, I just get scared. I didn't feel comfortable around him. Obviously, he wanted me to be a better player, but I thought he was just trying to get under my skin, trying to, you know. I didn't understand everything about the American Hockey League and up and down. This was all new for me, you know, signing this NHL deal. So it was a rough year. It was a fun year because I was called up and sent down the whole year. I was up, sitting in the stands, sent down. But that was kind of like I was 20 years old. So the guys in the team down there was kind of looking over their shoulders. Listen, the kid is going up again. You know, it was kind of like I felt a little uncomfortable, you know, being the first call up all the time. So
Right.
it was kind of scary. It was a scary year, I think, when I look back at it.
Well, so okay, so you make the team, you play the first 4 games, and they start healthy scratching you. Just from a player perspective, you mean 20-year-old kid, what is the messaging then, if any? Because I know that the league was a little bit different then. Like, what are they saying to you when you're getting healthy scratched?
No, they were just telling us, practice hard. Your time, we will put you in soon. So they weren't sure if they're going to send me down. That was the thing. They weren't sure if they're going to send me down. They're going to keep me there, you know. And they were waiting. A couple of weeks went by, and then obviously when that trade happened, so they probably tried to get. They called up Alexei Gusarov again. That stayed there whole year, and then I went down. So it's Right. It's just a normal process. If I look back at it, I've been called up and sent down so many times in my career, so I know the whole process now. And but I didn't know how to react when I was 20 years old.
Yeah. So Gustarov's played a little better down there or whatever, or played well enough to get called back up.
Obviously, he was one of the best players. I loved Alex Gusarov. I get to know him well, and he's unbelievable character because he's this skinny guy from Russian guy that, you know, the first the first training camp, the first exhibition games we played against Washington, and I was roommate with Alex Gusarov. And I came into the room and he was laying naked on his bed, smoking a cigarette. And I was like, you can take that bed, he goes. I was like, holy fuck, who is this guy? And that was Alex Gusarov. And he was some character, a great hockey player. And then was just the old Russian, you know.
They're beauties, eh? The Russians are beauties.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I liked him. He was one of the big names when it comes to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So you had Mark Crawford up, who was no like let's hug it out kind of coach, and you had Bob Hartley down in the minors, who was also one of those guys. Like you talked about, and then maybe we'll get into Bill Stewart too. Like we had him later in our career at a different spot, but you talked about being motivated by fear, and when I'm talking to parents and players now, like, you never know who you're going to run into, right? And like the idea of being emotionally stable and strong, right? Like to understand what you're all about is like so important, because you're not going to have somebody being your cheerleader all the time, you know, and you got to do it for you. Like, what do you wish you would have known maybe before experiencing Bob Hartley? If you could unwind a little bit, would you have done anything different to prepare for that?
If I knew how to be like professional the way he wanted me to be professional, obviously the American Hockey League it was kind of like a scary place back then, because you know how it was. It was big, strong players that hit hard and went after you. You know, it was like we talked about before. I was still a young kid, and I moved the puck, and I get a lot of ice time on the power play, but he wanted more. He wanted me to be a better defenseman. He wanted me to roughen up. He wanted me to fight. He wanted me to do stuff like at that time I didn't really feel comfortable doing, and I did it, and he still wasn't happy. So I didn't know exactly where he was, and I knew that Colorado, like kind of like said, the kid's going to play a lot. He needs to play his 20 minutes. So I felt that Colorado told him that I need to play. It wasn't him that wanted me to play, you know. Right. So he did a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily think you should do to younger players. Like we're doing the bus. This is just an example. We were playing against the Philadelphia Phantoms, and we were sitting on the bus, and I did a bad thing on the ice. I was kind of like moving towards, like I lost the guy, and he went in and scored. And on the bus after games when we lost, he shut down the lights. There was no one could talk. It was quiet. Even if we have like a 7-8 hours trip, no one could talk. And there was 2 monitors on the buses when they have the videos in the back and the front. And all of a sudden, the game came on both. And it was my clip. He came to my clip, and I was like, so everybody was looking at the monitor in the middle of we were driving. And they see my bad thing, when I was turning around, like kind of like not good. And he did it like 20 times. He rewinded it, did it 20 times. My confidence was just, you can believe my confidence just went out the window. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, didn't really necessarily do the job, and for a young player, I believe you should build them up, because when you're 20, you're still young. You need to build them. You need to teach them. You need to, and Bob Hartley, again, he's a great coach, coaching wise. Yeah, I understand him more now when I look back at it. But as a person, he didn't do it for me, man.
Right. Well, no, I mean, I think that's the biggest transition in our sport. I know I can't speak to other sports because I wasn't involved in them, but I think you had the tactical kind of structure coach, right? Everyone's really good at that, or most guys at the NHL level, pro level, were good at that. But the focus on the person, like the person behind the hockey player, I think is changing more, right? Like, how do I get Anders Myrvold, 20-year-old, to play his best, right? And if the approach of like breathing down your neck and kicking your ass isn't working, then you should try something else, right? And I think that I think the coaches do feel more accountable to that now, whereas I think before it was all on the player to be accountable to himself and to figure it out, right? And exactly. Fine. I mean, that's a fine way to be, because I do teach accountability, and I think we got to be accountable. But shit, man, that's hard sometimes, right? Like that's really
hard. It's hard. I think it's more like you have so many players. So if 2 of them does necessarily not going up the level you need, you just put in 2 of the other guys, because there's so many guys they're waiting to get that chance, instead of maybe taking the time to use more time on that player. Put in the time, and that's professional hockey. It's that's why guys like you and me, we need to tell them, hey, you're going to go to the American Hockey League, and it's going to be like that. It's a little different now, because now they're taking the plane. I see they take the plane and they eat in the restaurants. They don't eat on the bus for 10 hours. It's a little different. It's different. So, I mean, it's getting, it's getting more like the NHL, but before it was a huge difference, obviously.
Yeah. What would you like? Those are the moments, right? So you just said right there, my confidence was going down, down, down. It was out the window by the time the 20th clip was played, right? I mean, you're a young guy in a professional team. Like, where is the lesson in there? Like, to go back again, like how do you not leave that scenario with your tail between your legs? Like,
well,
let's talk about that.
obviously that year I got to experience the Stanley Cup. I went up and I was the Black Ace with the Colorado Avalanche, and I was with the team and saw the whole process and the playoff process when they won the cup. You know, I was there the whole time, and that put in so much motivation and inspired me so much that I'm going to work my ass off this summer to make the team next year. You know, last year of my contract, my second year, I had a 2-year deal. So I went back and I did everything in my power to make the team. And I came back to training camp and I get sent down as a 7th guy the second year. And I went down to Bob Hartley. And this time I asked for a trade. And I mean, as a young player, 21-year-old, you ask for a trade necessarily doesn't really catch up too well, you know. So I said, listen, I'm good enough to play in the NHL, and I'm not going to play here in the American League. Kind of like that's what I said. And it was a rough couple of months with Bob Hartley before I get traded to Boston. And that's a different story. But
is it a story worth telling?
Yeah, it is, because you know, obviously we played on the road against Syracuse, and Bob Hartley called me in game day. He said, "Listen, Myrvold, come down to my room." And I was like, holy shit, what are you going to talk about in the middle, like right before the game? You're going to talk to me now in the hotel room? So he said, listen, we did a deal, and you and Landon Wilson are going to Boston against the first round and the second round draft pick. Good luck, he says. And that was it. And I talked to the trainer. He goes, so I went to see the trainer, and he said, listen, we pack up your stuff. And then I just went on the plane the next morning to Boston. I said bye to the guys, you know how it is. And then I had to be ready in Boston. And I knew that when I was sitting on the plane, I was like, okay, I just need to be ready. And I came to Boston and I did a medical test, and I finished the year there playing 9 games with the Bruins, the 9 last game of the season. And I said, this is a perfect move for me. But obviously, Steve Casper, as a coach there, he get fired, and Pat Burns came into Boston, and he took with him 3 defensemen, and down I went the next year. So that's how it is, you know. You need to. So it's all, you know how it works, you know. It's a lot of politics, and I was frustrated by them, because then I was down in Providence, and I was waiting for my call up. I get called up to the Bruins, and a lot of times, because Providence and Bruins are really close to each other. But it was frustrating, because I really wanted to be in the NHL by then, when I was 22 years old, and I enjoyed my time, but still, I remember it was frustrating, because I was thinking about the NHL all the time, but I thought it was. I get screwed like everybody else said. I get screwed there. I get screwed.
Right.
But
how do you one of the things when I'm talking to players, and I mean, even at the minor hockey league level, right? Yeah. You don't make the A team, you make the B team, or you make the AA team and not the AAA team, or whatever it works, and everyone's frustrated, you know, then they think they got screwed, right? Like, you know, it's not fair. One thing I tried to do personally until that didn't work, and that was when I personally got frustrated, was like dominate where you're at. You know, exactly. like to have the mentality of like, well, if I'm too good to be here, then I got to play like I'm too good to be here.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's harder said than done too, right? But like to show up and to do the things required, you know, to be that force. For Anders Myrvold in that scenario, like how would you have gone about showing that you're dominating at that level?
No, but I mean, I went to the Providence Bruins, and I really dominated, because I get picked up to the All-Star game. I went to the All-Star game in the AHL that year, and obviously that's then you're top of the league in the AHL, and I had a great game and a great weekend, and I came back and played Providence and played tons of times. I played almost 30 minutes every game, so it was a lot of ice time. And but still, I wasn't. I mean, if I was older, I'm going to tell about it later, because I've been in the AHL when I was older, and then I was more relaxed and just said, listen, this is the way it is. Have fun with it. Enjoy the guys around you. Enjoy it, because this is a great time. This is a good league. This is actually a good experience. But I was 22 years old, and everything I was thinking about was the NHL. So I wasn't really necessarily there. And I believe that I could be cocky for the people around me, because I was probably talking about it too. You know, when I look back, I was probably talking about when am I going to get called up? One of those guys. I believe that, and I look back at it, I made some great friends as well in Providence, but like I say to young players now, take your time. We have a Norwegian guy that plays in Emilio Pettersen. He plays in the farmer team in the AHL for Calgary Flames. I say, listen, just enjoy your time there. Be as good as you can get. Do what you have to do, and then enjoy it, because all of a sudden they're going to call you, but don't think about it. Don't think about the call up. Do what you need to do and make a good living down there. And I think that's the key. But for me, I was up and down all the time, so it was kind of hard to get a spot to really enjoy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the mindset aspect that I obviously love talking about, because it's what I do. Like that one, like, okay, I said dominate where you're at, but that also means you have to be present where you're at. Like a lot of us do get caught up in that whole, like, you go from bus rides and pizza on the bus to private planes and shrimp cocktail, and it's hard not to get caught up in, like, oh, why aren't I there, or when am I going to be there, or what the big team's doing. But that doesn't, like, all that does is just sap your energy, and it changes your attitude. And there's a lot of things that happen with that. And again, easier said than done. But I do think, like, with some mentorship and some guidance, like, focus on where you're at, right? Like, live in that moment and be the best player you can be, the most valuable you can be for that team, and continue on being a good teammate, as you said a few times. Like I can't overstate that aspect of, like, how you show up in that environment. I know for me too, for the most part, I'm really proud of the way I handled my time in the minors on any team, right? But there was times where I was a pain in the ass, for sure, right? Like, pouty, like, felt like I was getting screwed. I'm too good to be here, right? Like, nobody wants that guy in the locker room.
Never. Exactly. So, I mean, that year in the AHL, and I was about to sign a new contract, and I get a new deal, but then obviously I went back to Sweden, and it was kind of like Djurgården in Sweden. They gave me a huge contract, and I said, listen, I'm going to go back and wait for my one-way contract. That was my approach. So I kind of left my dream, like going from my dream to go to Europe and play for Djurgården. And then I felt I was on the wrong spot right away. So, I mean, if I look back at my career, I've been in so many different places, but I never had the calmness to stay at one place, the patience. I'd never had the patience, because I need to move on. If someone told me, like, sit down, Myrvold, and relax, you're on the right spot, just go to gym, go and eat, go sleep, do that, I would probably still play in our team, but I was like, no, off to the next one. And they kind of like, no one getting a hold of me, because I was there, and I went to Sweden, and I played 2 years in Sweden there, and I went back and I get a 2-way contract with the New York Islanders. So I went back again, the New York Islanders, and played. And then I was up and I was down, and I was playing in Springfield and up and down with the New York Islanders, and I was scratched, and it was kind of like the same thing. I was right in the middle there, and I felt like it's all about the one-way contract. I need the one-way contract because I get sent down. Why do I get sent down here? Because I don't have the one-way contract. So then I went, then I signed with Mannheim. And I mean, that was when I was 26 years old. And I kind of said I ended up in Mannheim because that was going back to Europe, and you were there. And that year, if I look back, that was probably, as a hockey player, my worst year as a player. I came in and obviously me and the coach, we didn't talk the same language. I wasn't prepared the way I should get prepared. I didn't have the work ethic I had before, and I mean, I went through that year. You obviously were there. I didn't contribute anything to the team. As a player, I didn't play good. I didn't do the work before practice, after practice. I was kind of a little bit easy to get out and have a beer and do the stuff that kind of like settle you instead of keeping you moving forward. And I was 26 years old, but my career kind of stopped a little bit. So after that year, I mean, that was probably the biggest change. And this is what I want to talk about, because Mannheim, accepting being your friend. It was kind of like my low point as a hockey player. So I asked myself a few questions like, what are you doing? Like, are you the athlete you want to be right now? Are you doing the job in the gym? Are you doing the stuff that you need to do to be as a professional to brought you to the NHL? And the answer was no. So I needed to do something. I called my agent. That was kind of funny because I called my agent and I said, listen, can you get a tryout for me to one of the best teams in the NHL? And he goes, Myrvold, relax. Just have a few years in the Europe, and maybe you can come back and see. No, a tryout. We can get a tryout. I look at my stats. I can get a tryout. They can send me home the first day. So, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try to do that, he said. But then I did 4 months of hard training. I trained 3 times a day. I had a physical coach. I called him. I didn't go out. I didn't touch anything. I wasn't partying. I was really in the tunnel to just be as good physical. I went on the ice three times a week. I was working on what brought me to the NHL. And those 4 months, they still helping me to know that everything is possible. Because when I get the tryout with Detroit Red Wings, at that time, they had the best team in the NHL. They had, obviously, that was before the lockout, because the people were making tons of money. And you had Brett Hull, you had Dominic Hasek, you had Lidstrom, all those guys were there. But that was the first time when I stepped into a training camp that I felt I was good enough to play in the NHL, because I was fit, I was ready, I was a professional. So I felt like, hey, this level, I'm catching it right now. I feel like I was good enough, and I could play with these guys, and that's why they gave me the contract, and I had a great year. I was with Grand Rapids when I knew I was going to go down to Grand Rapids and be there. That was one of the best teams in the NHL, AHL. I went to the All-Star game there, and I played games in NHL. I was up and I was down, but they had a great team, and that year proved that anything is possible, because you were there the year before. You knew how it was. I was scratched in Mannheim. I didn't play. I was playing as a forward in the fourth line in some of the games because Stuart didn't want me there. And I believe it was not Stuart's fault. It was my fault, because I didn't really take care of myself the way I should. And he can be the guy everybody's talking about, but still it was up to me to make a change there.
Right. Yeah, man, that's super. Like, that's really inspiring. Like that whole story. Because like I said, that was back before the days of all the being able to keep track of guys and everything else, right? So the fact that you ended up there, and I can totally relate to you saying that, like, and it's so weird or coincidental, like how parallel our stories are. Like, you mentioned back that you were a part of that Black Ace on that Colorado run. Like, I was a Black Ace for Florida, that same championship, the one where you guys swept us 4 straight.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, I was doing the exact same thing, right? Like, on the other side. And that was I had just got called up from Spokane, so from the WHL, and I was there for that whole playoff run. That was my first experience as an NHLer, was going to the NHL final, right? I mean, you won it. And then, then the trades, and then the up and down and all this stuff. And then my career went full circle from Japan. I went from Japan, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm still good enough to be in the NHL. Like, I think I want to try out with the NHL. I want to go back. I think I'm good enough. And Detroit Red Wings was the ones that I went to, right? And they were still a juggernaut then. It was 2009, and went to camp. And again, I totally felt ready. And I think I don't know. I think I would have made the team, but I got hurt like day 2 or whatever, like cartilage, and I got 1 exhibition game. But I mean, I was 60%, and I wasn't good enough to make the NHL at 60%. But I was ready mentally and physically, and like, I think from maturity level, from a man level, to be like, I belong here. This is where I'm supposed to be. Anyways, and it never worked out. But I can totally relate to that kind of sense of calmness, like that you have arrived, right? Like, this is my time.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think the whole journey, like I said, when we talk about our journey from 19, when we went to the juniors, in those 10 years from then, so many ups and so many downs, and so many experiences with the AHL, with Europe, with different team, with different coaches. No one told us. No one said, listen, this is the way it is. No one told me that, listen, you're on the right spot, Myrvold. Just stay here, be calm, work on your game. You need to be better at this. Because my head was spinning. And I mean, that's why my career being as spinning as well, And I mean, that's the mentoring. I mean, it's so important to mentor young players, to say, listen, you're in the right spot. If you want to make the NHL, just stay here, work on your game, go to the gym, be there before the other guys, do those stuff, show up, and it's okay to be scared, because everybody's scared, scared not to be good enough, scared not to, maybe scared of the other guys, scared in the locker room. It's okay, just that's the process. You meet a lot of different guys, a lot of big names and different guys that competes against you also. So it's yeah, I think both of us get prepared for that year. Now I'm ready. When I went to training camp with Detroit, I said, listen, I'm ready. I know what it's all about. I know what it's all about. Right. And it's a really good experience that I could experience that in
one of the ways just for those listening, I'm sure you'll agree with that, is like when it gets hard and like those, those human emotions that you're talking about, right, that are outside of kind of the ideal emotions to be a great hockey player, scared of whatever, uncertain, hesitant, maybe even bored. Sometimes like you throw in whatever you want there. The grind of it is like to stay connected to what it is that you love about what you're doing. And I think sometimes as a pro, like that year, with the year you're talking about in Mannheim, I know there was times where both of us weren't really connected to the hockey part of being a pro. We were connected to other things that we enjoyed about it, and we took our foot off of the idea of being the best player that potentially we could be. And I just think that helps guys get through, right? Like when it's not just about the work and it's not just about, whatever, where you're not or where you should be, but hey, I just get to go skate today. I get to do this, like that's pretty cool. That you're a pro and you're getting to play a great game. And I think it's easy to forget about that sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I'm right now. I'm a sports manager for one of the biggest teams in Norway, Vålerenga. It's in the capital, and it's a professional team with I'm like kind of like the GM. It's a big thing here in Oslo. A brand new arena with 6,000 people is packed almost every night, and I mean. It's for me. It's I tell the guys all the time, enjoy the process. You can say, enjoy it, enjoy coming here, because one day it's over, and this is a great lifestyle you have right here. Yeah, and it's just for a short amount of time, and then it's over. So enjoy it. Great I wish lesson. I maybe enjoyed it a little more, because I was looking at the goal too much instead of the process. Again, instead of enjoying my time there, I was kind of like reaching for something that was over there, but the process is the most important thing. Enjoy what you do. When you
were in that Joe Louis locker room there with you mentioned some of the names already. I know you weren't there like a whole season, but I mean being around that, like any takeaways from that experience, either people, culture, otherwise?
Yeah, well, actually, there was a great locker room, and I mean, Stevie Eisenman was kind of captured, because it was kind of funny when I was called up there with the Detroit, and I had played a really good game, and he looked over in the locker room. He goes, "Myrvold, I saw you 7 years ago. Where have you been?" He goes, Steve Eisenman. So I mean, because I was playing a good game. And I was sitting over there, and I knew the whole game. There was a lot of big names in that locker room, because I felt comfortable in that locker room because I was good enough on the ice. I felt, I belong here, and I wasn't doing too much, but I was. They had Brett Hull. He was kind of funny. He was. I remember one day we were playing. I get the pass from Nicholas Lidstrom on the blue line, and I saw Brett Hull going up the middle, and I could have passed him through the middle. But instead of making that pass that could maybe have a stick and a turnover, I chipped it along the boards. So I was sitting on the bench, and he goes, "Hey," that was one of my first games. He goes, "Hey, Myrvold." He goes, reaching over me on the bench. "Hey, Myrvold, are you one of those defensemen, D to D to their D?" So he was like, so it's, the whole thing is, what it's all about, but it was funny. I remember that well, and but the thing was, they was a good group of guys. You have the Nicholas Lidström, you have the Swedes there, a lot of Swedes, and then Kronwall, he was a rookie that year that I was hanging out with a lot. So it was a good bunch of guys, but the guy that really stick to my mind was Steve Eisenman, how professional he was, and how he took care of himself. He was a leader that didn't really scream too much. He was, quiet and took care of his own business, but leading by example. That's what I want to do as well. I want to lead by example. So that's what I do with Camp Myrvold. If you want someone to get up in the morning, you have to get up yourself in the morning, and you have to do that stuff. And if you do that, you're going to get the respect. And that's what's important for young players as well, that do those things, because the guys around you are going to respect you, and it's going to make your ride a little easier.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. A lot of people ask the players that I'm working with, they want to be captains or they want to be recognized as such, and what does a leader mean? And the first thing I say is, like, you have to lead yourself with consistency,
100%,
right?
100%.
Like, and when you get that dialed in, you almost don't have to do anything else, because like so few are able to do that. And that's why good leaders are hard to find, because to take care of your own business consistently, in that manner is like, you guys are drawn to you, because it's like, holy, like you remember that. So like, that's totally, I've heard that about Steve Yzerman a ton of times. And so, I mean, anyone listening out there, you want to be a leader, just take care of your backyard, and not in a selfish way, just have high standards, have standards that other guys don't have. And if you can maintain that throughout the length of a hockey season, I mean, you're doing something other guys aren't, and you're being exactly the leader that they need to be and the example they need to be. So good on you. Actually, you know what did that for me? Like, I felt as a hockey player that, I mean, I don't know, 8 out of 10, kind of like, I thought that I had pretty high standards, that I did a good job. Obviously, there's lots of places where I could have improved, but being a dad, like, kind of changed that for me. Like, as far as how am I showing up daily? I mean, what kind of example am I giving my boys? Like, I don't know, like, for you as a dad, was that it's a whole different level of standard in leadership, I think.
It is. And I think leading by example, my girls are 5 and 8. I mean, obviously they're still young, but leading by example. And my oldest girl, she's playing handball and she's doing the gymnastic, and she hates to lose. And I mean, I know it comes from me, because I can't hide it, because I hate it. So I don't let her win. And I mean, I think it's good. I'm not going to let her win anything. And I mean, just trying to talk to her about it's okay. You don't be afraid to lose, because you're going to lose so much. You're going to lose more than you win in your life. And if you just if you can handle the losses, then you're going to, have that process and that moving forward. And that means everything in life. And I mean, it's a good experience to have been through what we have, because we know it's so tough to reach the top. But it's so enjoyable to put in the effort and make a progress. It's the best thing in the world.
Got to keep showing up, right?
Got to keep showing up. That's the thing.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, that's kind of funny. I'm just thinking about the Peloton that I have sitting like 15 feet away from me, and like I wrote on Instagram the other day, like, I had a personal best, right? And it was a ride that I wasn't expecting it to be, but you keep showing up. You keep putting in the work, and then you never know when your day is going to be, right? I mean, it's a stupid little anecdote, right? But it applies to sports too, right? You never know when that phone's going to ring, right? You never know when you're going to get that call up. You never know when your opportunity is going to be there. But if you're doing that work in the meantime, and if you've been thinking about it and doing the right things, you're going to be as prepared as you can be for that. And that's all you can really ask, right?
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is.
Hey there, back to the conversation in a moment, but I want to chat about sponsorship. So people have always asked me, I mean, why don't you have a sponsor? Or do you look for sponsors? And I have not actively looked for a sponsor. I've reached out to like 2 or 3 corporations that I thought it would be good fits, have got to different stages of the process and haven't gotten across the finish line. And then the players that have reached out to me, just, I don't feel are great fits, like, seems like gambling sites and apps are everywhere right now, and that just doesn't seem to sit well with me for whatever reason. And some of these other things just don't seem to align. So I'm a little bit picky, but I would like to get into a sponsorship or collaboration with somebody, being the right party, or being the right company, or that has the right synergies. So if you are out there, if you either have an idea for a corporate sponsor, or if you are somebody that would like to be involved in the podcast and be associated with the content here, by all means, that'd be a great reason to reach out at upmyhockey.com. Let me know about your sponsorship inquiry, whether it be a warm contact, or whether it be you yourself that would like to get involved. I am curious and I am looking. As I said, I just haven't found the right fit. So until that happens, I will continue to self-produce this podcast. I will continue to use it as a self-promotion vehicle with as far as up my hockey and the programming that we're running. And it's been a fine resource for that too. So I mean, I'm happy with the way things are, but yeah, if there is the right sponsor out there, if there is the right synergy and opportunity, I would definitely welcome it. So looking for options. Now let's get back to the podcast with Anders Myrvold. What okay, way off topic here, and I have no idea if this is true or not, but like in one of my little mini hunts to try and find out where you were and to get a hold of you, someone told me that you got beat up outside a bar in Switzerland and that you were in whatever, like in a coma or something. Yeah. Is that true?
So what happened? It was not in Switzerland, it was in Norway. What happened was after that year in Detroit, I went to the bar in Oslo and came into not a fight. There was 3 guys that jumped me, and I went in the coma and I had 85 stitches in my head. I was in the coma for 4 days and kind of ended everything. And I was only 28 years old, so it's kind of like the doctor said, "Listen, you're not going to play hockey anymore." And I took a wrong turn. My life took a really wrong turn because all the emotion and all the passion and everything I put into what I loved and trying to build my whole identity around hockey player was gone. So I, well, instead of taking it easy, I took a hard turn, and I used my days of drinking and doing drugs, and I went hard at it, and it went so hard that I had to check myself into a rehab a year after. So I went through rehab, and the doctor said that your head is okay, so you can play again. So I played a little bit after I came back, played a little bit after that, but I still struggled with alcohol and drugs. But in 2013, I put the bottle on and the cap on, and I have been sober for 10 years now. So I mean, I went on a rough path there when my career was kind of over because of my head. I'm not going to blame the head because of the other stuff, but as the problem came to me, I didn't handle the way I should, and I used, like I said, a lot of bad stuff in my body to feel to kind of like dull the pain.
That is great. So I didn't think it was true. I can't even believe I just asked it. I was like, I'm just going to ask. So like that was, so it was true in that capacity. And so that was, again, to me, you just finished playing a year in Grand Rapids and with Detroit, and this happens. And so like, obviously that sounds like close to death, correct?
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, that was close. And I mean, it was close. So it took a U-turn. Everything took a U-turn and to the worst. And I tried to come back, but it was tough. Emotionally, it was tough because I was on a different stage of mine. I tried to play here in Norway a little bit, and what didn't really work out. And I was kind of my motivation was just down on the bottle of everything. And I lived hard. My whole life I lived kind of hard. So my feeling and my emotion wasn't really intact. So I need to go through a process to land, to get rid of first of all the drinking problem and then take care of the other stuff.
Right.
So you mean it's been a turn for the better, because then I get these 2 babies coming, my family. I'm with my girl, that's the mom to the 2 kids I have, Emilia and Frida, and we made a great it's been a really great family. We have enjoyed the time together, and it's so, like you said, I want to be a leader for them, and for me, waking up clear in my head and be there for them, and be the the leader you need to be, take a responsibility as a father. It's the most important thing, and I'm really thankful that I could be sober doing that, so they don't need to see me as my worst.
Holy crap, man. That's yeah, I mean, again, so if everyone listening, like we didn't talk but prior to, and I was like, well, let's just get into it. He's like, there's been some highs and there's been some lows. So I mean, I guess we're covering the lows. And I don't need to dive into the whole thing, but like, was there any type of like with the incident? I mean, that sounds like criminal
Yeah.
potentially. Like, are these
Yeah.
guys in jail?
He went to the jail for 1 year, and so, I mean,
Are you able to let the go of that? Like, is there I don't know, like
yeah.
revenge? Like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
no,
like what the right word is. But
I put the revenge on myself, and I did so much not bad. I did a lot of bad stuff, and my name is kind of big here in Norway. So I was in the newspaper for many years, and a bad reason, and there was a lot of downs for my name, and I mean, when I even had to go to jail for some months for some sentences. So that was a turning point for me and a low for me, and I came back. And I mean, if you look at the 10 last years, it's been nothing but great.
Right.
Everything comes back to you when you like you said, when you do the right things, and you take care of yourself. People's gonna get the faith back in you.
Holy crap, Anders. So like the first Norwegian player to ever play in the NHL, like you're living that dream at 20, you're a Colorado Avalanche, you've been in the Stanley Cup final, all that stuff, and kind of feeling really good. Obviously, the other end of it is like this local national hero kind of goes to the other side of it, and then you come out again, I mean, stronger and better, it seems like, and kind of really reestablished yourself within the country and in your community. Like what it almost looks like it was a national kind of like what was the word I'm looking for? Like a TV series almost on you. Hey, following you around.
Well, I mean, it's now you're a good role model for everybody, because I've been open about this. I talked to, because I'm in the paper, so people know the story. So I told it to the people in Norway, and now I get calls from other guys that in a bad situation, and trying to lead them on, and then trying to, hey, follow this and do what I did. There's a chance for you to get out of the hole. I'm gonna go with you, and it's a path that it's enjoyable, and it's new, and it's great, and I like to stay on that path. And I mean, it's great. And I mean, right now I have the Camp Myrvold, and I'm a sports manager for Vålerenga, so I do the stuff I love to do, and there's nothing better than that.
Well, you know what? I mean, it's ironic too how this conversation's gone full circle, and the idea that I started out asking you the question of, do you think that people can learn some of these things, right? Like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you change? And the growth mindset that I talk to hockey players about is exactly your story, right? I mean, like, yeah, I mean, you were at one place and you got to a really crappy place, and a really place that you weren't proud of. But you know what? Like, from that, you were able to change, and you were able to reinvent yourself, and you're able to come out shinier and now be an example and a mentor and a role model, for other people. So like, I do like, man, I love that. And I love celebrating that too, because it's not where you're currently at, it's where you end up, I think, and where you're trying to get to. And obviously you're a pretty good example of, you can be and do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm going to give one advice to younger people that who want to go somewhere, they have to look around them and see what kind of people they have around them. What kind of buddies do I have? Do they do the stuff that's going to take me to the level I want? Because they're going to fool themselves if they have the wrong type of guys around them, and that's the most important thing. And that's in the locker room as well. If you have too many bad apples, you need to move, or you need to move them, or you need to tell them to come with you, or they're gonna go somewhere else, because you can't fool yourself to be around the wrong people and think you're gonna go not with them, because you're gonna end up exactly as them. And that's what I experienced, on the good way and the bad way. So right now I'm really focusing on not only having good people around me, but I want the people that brings the energy and brings the work ethic and stuff like that. They can come, because that's the people that I want to have around me. And if you have a problem, no problem, just come with me. But then you need to do the work. You need to do the work, man. Don't complain. Don't be a shitter.
Do you focus with Camp Myrvold? Like, I saw some of your Instagram now. I've been kind of following you a little bit. It looks mostly like adults, like business people, kind of, or are you focus with sports, younger athletes as well?
Yeah, well, I do. But like I talk to, I speak to people. I speak to younger guys about this. I love to speak to kids around 15, 16 years old. That's what I love, because they're so coachable and they know nothing about life. They have no clue. and they're just looking at you, and then they want to know everything. So if you can just tell them one thing that stick to their mind, that maybe do a little change for them, that's huge. That's huge. So I mean, it's more inspiring to talk to those youngsters, but I talk to everybody, and you can also change the an old man that you can change him as well. But I mean, it's inspiring to see those youngsters that maybe have, they have not too much energy, but they have a lot of temper, and they have a lot of emotions, and they don't know how to handle it. And if you do tell them to do that, and they do it, it's incredible to see.
Yeah, man, I can.
You work with them, so
Yeah, I mean, it's so, and it can be so impactful, like breakthrough kind of. And I don't underestimate that word. Like it really is. You can have like some really, really profound changes when it comes to the mindset, right? Like what they take away from a program or coaching or whatever. And that, I mean, it totally is. I mean, it's super, super fun. And yeah, I mean, I love what you're doing over there in Norway, and 120 in, we're an hour and 20 in, and I know we've got 20 years to catch up on, but I'm gonna let our listeners go, and maybe we'll continue this on after I press stop. But yeah, man, like I really appreciate you coming on, really appreciate you sharing that, and I'm so glad I asked that question. You probably would have let that whole thing just not even get brought up, wouldn't you?
Well, I was thinking about the right timing, because we talked about so much. I saw the time, and then if he brings it up, I'm gonna answer him. No worries. No, we do it another time. We can do another podcast.
Anyways, man, lots to learn. Thanks so much for being here. I'm gonna stick on with me here after I press record. But yeah, is there any place, like, I know that you have a pretty good Instagram following there. You mentioned what you do. Is there any place that people want to get in touch with you or hold with you or follow you? Like, where can they do that?
Yeah, they can do that on Instagram, and then send me a message, and then and I'm about anything. If it's about anything in life, just give me a shout.
And that's at Anders Myrvold. Is that your handle?
Yeah, Anders Myrvold. Just Anders Myrvold. It's gonna come up.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Well, great seeing you again, and stick around here. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, perfect.
Well, thank you for listening to the entire episode of the Anders Myrvold episode. Wow, that was crazy. I had no idea when I asked that question where that was going to go there. I legitimately thought that was like a false news thing that I heard about with Anders being in a coma, and the fact that he had been in a coma for 4 days, and that I had no idea about his journey thereafter, with as far as his depression and his drugs use and the rest of it, and his jail time. Wow, shocking to me. But what an amazing story of what a comeback story, and what a story of resiliency, and the fact that he's able to share, and mentor and be a part of people's lives, and use it for good. Like there's such a story there. It's totally surprising to me that the Anders I knew had this story thereafter, and really quickly thereafter. I can't believe that it was 2 years after I played with him that this had all went down, and that I knew essentially nothing about it. Feel actually bad as a buddy now, thinking about that, and even what he was going through there then. Not that potentially I could do anything, but anyways, it's always nice to have a circle. And I mean, that was one thing that Anders talked about, right? Was building your circle. And I think that is important. Really, you can't be overstated how important that is. And whether that is something that you manufacture yourself by like actually inputting people intentionally, whether that be paid or otherwise, or just being aware as an athlete of what it is you're doing and who you're doing it with. It is so much easier to get after it when you're with guys that get after it. Those standards get pushed. No different than playing on a championship team. Like when I was talking with Brett Howden a few episodes ago, and he was talking about like the standard of effort with the Vegas Knights. I mean, how they go about their day as individuals, what he gets exposed to from some of these superstars and how they do things. it brings you up. You have to be curious about your own development. You have to work harder. You have to stay a little bit longer. So yeah, I mean, if you're with people that are wired that way, that are constantly pushing, constantly challenging, what is it going to do to you? I mean, it's going to raise your own personal bar, just as I alluded to in this conversation with my own kids, right? Like in our own house, there's an internal, not battle, but challenge, right? They're pushing each other in their own way. Just their examples will drive someone else to do something, to do a little bit more. And I feel that my wife and I are probably deserve to be part of that conversation too. You know, if my kids come home and they know I've been working for, 14 hours and I choose to get on the bike at 9:30 and sweat my ass off until I can't barely breathe anymore. You mean that's showing them a standard. That's showing them that I'm willing to do things at inconvenient times, right? And that is your environment. So I know you can't pick your mom and dad, right? You can't pick the head coach of your team. These are things that you can't do as hockey players. You can't control, but you can definitely control where you spend your time and who you give your attention to. And those are two really, really big factors: your time and your attention. These are within your control as a human and as a hockey player. And so surround yourself with people that are uplifting, that are providing you with confidence and direction. And whether that be on your scroll or your feed, or whether that be the actual human beings that you keep in your life, keep your circle tight. Make sure that it's people that good people that want what you want, that are prepared to do things that you're prepared to do, and you guys can just thrive off each other. And that was one of the lessons I think that I took away from what Anders was talking about, and how important that is, because it can happen pretty quickly if you get in with the wrong group. So pay attention. And I think that's probably a good way to end this one. So until next time, play hard and keep your head up.